Good afternoon, Kulkarni sir. May I audible to you?
Yes, very much. I hope I am also audible to you.
Yes, sir. Sure.
So, shall we check whether the presentation works
Yes, you
before
can.
1 or 2 minutes?
Yes, you can, sir.
Shall I share the screen?
Yes.
I think you are not given the permission.
No, sir. I have made co-host to you. You can just share your screen, sir. No issue.
No, it is not. It is not working. Just check whether you have really given the permission.
Yes. I have made co-host to you.
Okay. Okay. Let me check.
Yes, now it is saved, sir.
Can you see it?
Uh, yeah, your screen is visible. Desktop is visible, sir.
Where the presentation has gone then? Okay.
I think open the presentation in presentation mode, sir, and then share the screen. I think.
That's what I did. Can you see it?
Yes, sir. Screen is visible.
Presentation is visible?
Yes. Presentation is visible, sir. Just
And can you finish the slide?
forward backwards screen slides.
Yeah, I've done it. Can you see
Yes.
the next screen?
Yeah, it's
Algorithm agenda.
yes. It is moving.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Hope it will work.
So welcome all the participant in the last session, today's last session on STTP on data analytics and Python. So today's esteemed speakers and resource person for this session is now available with us. That is Professor Dr. D.B. Kulkarni sir from Walchand College of Engineering. So I briefly introduce sirs. So, so Dr. D.B. Kulkarni sir is now in charge Central Computing Facility, Professor of the Information Technology Department. Sir's total experience, teaching experience is of 20 years at the Walchand College of Engineering. Sir has completed his MTech and a PhD degree from the Indian Institute of Technology, Mumbai and Shivaji University, Kolhapur, respectively. Sir has also received a research fellowship from the DST, SCRC, and received postdoctoral research and award University of New Brunswick, Canada, and UGCs. Sir has also worked as a visiting professor at Technological University, Vienna, Austria, With this, sir also received various honors, awards, and grants, which includes 1500 US dollar award for the NSF TCPP Early Adopter Award, then Intel Micro Grant Award in Thread Safe Data Structure, that is of again 1500 US dollars. Also, sir has received 47 lakhs fund from the Development of Problem Solving Environment PSC for scalable high performance computing. Sir has also received 7 lakh grant for the fractal video coding from the AICT. Again, sir received 6 lakh grant for the parallel processing and distributed computing from the AICT. Research interest area is in the area of HPC, parallel computing, cloud computing, computer algorithm, and computer networks. So, and sir also has published many more papers in the international conference as well as journals with high Scopus index. With this, I request Dr. D.B. Kulkarni, sir, please take over this session.
Sushant sir, thank you very much. Thank you for the nice introduction.
Welcome, sir.
I think I am audible to all the participants.
Yes.
I can see approximately 40 plus participants in the session now. So shall I start?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Participant
Yeah.
will join sequentially.
Yes. Okay. So thank you very much for inviting me. Today's topic, which I would like to present before you, is the clustering algorithm. Basically, these algorithms are very important as far as artificial intelligence and machine learning are concerned. So, of course, we'll be looking at what those terms are also. You must have studied it, and there must be few sessions on this machine learning and artificial intelligence earlier in this particular workshop. So we are not going in details of that, but we'll be specifically dealing with the clustering algorithms, wherein we'll be looking at how the data can be clustered, or clustering is nothing but classification, how it can be classified into a specific group. And there are, of course, various techniques. The reason behind looking at why classification is important is whatever data we get, we want to know what characteristic it has, and based on the characteristic we put it in an appropriate group. And probably these groups are very convenient way of handling the data, because if you have tremendous amount of data, it is always better to classify or cluster them into different groups or different clusters and then work upon them. So let me share the presentation. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we are talking about clustering algorithms, and we'll be dealing with some of the algorithms. Basically, we'll be looking at two algorithms. One is K-NN algorithm, and other is K-means algorithm. So these K-NN, K-mean, though they are very simple, but they are used very widely, and they are very popular in artificial intelligence or machine learning. The reason behind this is they are very intuitive, very simple, straightforward, but at the same time slightly complex in the sense that you need to understand the logic behind them to implement it anywhere in any of the applications. So today's agenda is we'll be looking at, first of all, let us look at what the algorithms are. What do we mean by algorithms? How do we characterize the algorithms? What do we mean by algorithm optimization? And then we'll look at some of the terms frequently used and very popular terms nowadays, which are AI and machine learning. Of course, we'll just have a look. We'll just have a look at the definition of these two, and then we'll turn our attention to the two famous algorithms. One is K nearest neighbor, and other is K-means. Of course, today we'll be just restricting ourselves to K nearest neighbor, KNN. And in tomorrow's session, 1 o'clock, maybe we'll deal with K-means. K-means is slightly complicated, and K nearest neighbor is that way very straightforward, very simple. It's intuitive in the sense that normally in day-to-day life you might have came across various such issues in which you will be directly or indirectly using this algorithm. Of course, what we are doing is we are putting it in form of proper say framework, and then we are calling it as KNN algorithm. So, so let us first of all have a look at the algorithm term. Algorithm is actually any logic. So the logic which can be represented in form of say some figure, it can be represented in form of it is basically a solution how you're going to solve the problem. So it is strategy to solve the problem. And how do you represent it? Maybe you can write an essay on it, on how you write an what is the logic of your algorithm. That is, you are just explaining how the problem is solved. And normally, the way in which it is written, either it could be written in programming language, or it could be written in some abstract way. Um, Basic requirement or basic need of writing it is you should be able to convey to others that what approach is being used for solving the given problem. The examples of the algorithms are a simple algorithm. Example is sorting algorithm. Then we can think of matrix multiplication, in which two matrices needs to be multiplied. And then some of the complex algorithm could include weather forecasting algorithms, wherein you have very huge matrices which consists of the data pertaining to the weather domain. That is, it could be the pressure, it could be temperature, it could be the wind velocity, and all those things. And what you're doing is because basically you're working on weather forecasting, you will be manipulating these matrices and then coming out with some solution in terms of the prediction of the weather. Maybe what will happen after 15 days, 1 month. So it is said that monsoon is arriving. So those things are nothing but weather predictions or weather forecasting. And we actually come to know about this based on the data which is being crunched. And you can just imagine that to forecast the weather after 15 days or after 1 month, it is very difficult because you need to look at lot many parameters. You need to look at, and these parameters, the size and shapes of these parameters or these things are very huge. So the biggest problem in this algorithm is how you're going to handle this much of data. And once you start handling it, how you're processing the data. And once you process it, probably how you're representing your results. So maybe whatever you see on the uh, television screens as an outcome of weather forecast is those outputs which are created by those algorithms. So visualization of the data is also important in these cases. So restricting ourselves to algorithms, we say that we have different examples, and basically our problem is to write the strategy or the logic of the algorithm. Now, given a problem, one problem can be solved in many ways. So there could be many ways to solve the problem. So the algorithms probably or the logic to solve the problem could be different. Of course, we expect that the outcome of all the algorithms must be same, because that's the solution, or that probably could be the unique solution for the given problem. So whatever logic you use, probably you will be arriving at the same conclusion or same output. But probably we'll be thinking of which is the best solution. So suppose given a problem, say in a class, 4 students comes up with 4 different solutions, but with the assumption that the output of all these 4 algorithms, all these 4 logics is same. Now we want to know which one is the best suited, or which one is the best approach for solving the problem. Probably one must have used very long way to get to the solution. Others might have used some shortcuts. So we want to know which is the best solution. And now this best can be decided in terms of either time. Uh, so we measure what is called as time complexity. And this basically is a execution time required for running the algorithm. And the second parameter could be space, that is how much memory. Now this space is primary memory. So how much memory your logic consumes or your programs which or your code consumes. So depending on the length of the program and the length of the data or the length of the memory size which is required for executing the program, probably will be the important parameters. And based on these requirements, we say that this, say, solution A is better than solution C, or solution D is better than solution A, and whatever. Uh, so if you look at them, if you look at these implementation, as I said, to compute the execution time or the running time of an algorithm, you need to run it on some machine. Now the question is, I can run it on any machine. I can run it on my simple laptop, I can run it on desktop, I can run it on mobile, I can run it on, say, maybe uh, a powerful server. Maybe it could be a supercomputer on which I can run the program. So every time it will give you different execution time. So question is, which one is to be taken as a standard one? Because ultimately we want to compare the performances of the different logics proposed by different students in class. So um, computing or looking at the performance based merely on the execution time will be injustice to individuals. Why? Because probably one students must have an access to simple laptop, very old laptop, and another student might have run that algorithm on supercomputer somehow. So it is possible that though the logic, though the mind which is applied and the way in which the problem is solved is better in terms of A or for the student A, but still the total time required for execution could be more. So normally what we want is, we want it to be independent of the platform. Now what is this platform? Platform is, as I said, it should be independent of the machine on which the program is being run. So I don't want to ask them whether you're running it on mobile or desktop or laptop or whatever. So I want that running time or run time or execution time could be or to be independent of the platform. Platform may include lot many other things, like uh, uh, it could be depending on the hardware on which you're running the program. It could be depending on the software on which you're running, with which you're running the program. Now, software can have again two components. One is the operating system on which or with which you're running the program, or the programming language with which you're implementing. So ideally, I want the performance measurement of the algorithm to be independent of all these things. It is independent of hardware, it should be independent of the software like operating system, the programming language used, and everything. And if we can make it independent of all these things, then we can clearly and openly we can compare the execution times. Now, if I'm making it independent of the machine, that means I'm not running it on machine virtually. So I need to compute some other parameter, or I need to look at that algorithm with some other perspective. Now that some other perspective is, as far as the time complexity is concerned, is probably I'm looking at how many times a particular operation is being used. Say for example, if I consider a sorting algorithm, the important operation required here in sorting is comparison. So probably I can think of looking at how many times the elements are being compared. So given say n elements for sorting, how much time or how many times you compare two elements. So one logic will say that I am comparing it with X number of times. Another approach may say that I am comparing, uh, I'm doing say Y number of comparisons. Having said so, now I'll compare the values X and Y, and whatever is smaller, it clearly indicates that the, the operation is performed with less number of operations, less number of comparisons. And that is the clear winner of the comparison. Okay, that is a clear winner of the two algorithm candidates or logic candidates. So what I want is, I want to express the complexity in terms of the number of times the operation is being used. If I take another example, say matrix multiplication, I'm not using any comparison here. Okay, element comparisons are not being used, but in matrix multiplication, I'm using element multiplications as a basic operation. Like for example, I'm taking the first row and then taking the first column, first row of A and first column of B, and then I'm carrying out the multiplication. So here, what is important for me is how many element multiplications are being done. So for computing one element of your resultant matrix, I need to do n element multiplications. And if I'm computing all the elements in the resultant matrix, probably it will be those are n square elements. And for every element, I need to have n number of element multiplication. So overall, the complexity of the entire matrix multiplication algorithm will be n cube. Okay, so this way I can compute the complexity of the algorithms, and once the complexities are computed in terms of number of times the operation is being performed, and that too in terms of probably the size, that is, if the size of the input increases, probably the number of computations also increases. So whatever you are expressing, that is number of times the computation is being used, that will be in terms of the size of the input. Say again, for example, for sorting, it will be in terms of n, where n is the size of the input. So probably if you take two different logics, one is your bubble sorts. So bubble sort is being used, and the complexity of this bubble sort is said to be. Can you? I think I can see your chat, so you can just put these figures, whatever I'm asking, in the chat. I'll wait for 1 minute to get some inputs from you. I just wanted to know how many times you compare the elements in the bubble sort. Am I audible? I'm not moving the slide, so I'm just asking one query, one small question. So I'm expecting an answer in the chat.
Yes, sir. You
How
are
many
audible, sir.
comparisons are being used in bubble sort? If I'm audible, just let me know how many comparisons are being used in bubble sort. I hope bubble sort is, I mean, the logic is known to you. Hello?
Yes, sir. You are audible, sir.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm expecting answer. I'll wait for 1 minute.
N minus of 1.
N, sorry,
Of 1.
please repeat.
N minus of 1. If n is a number of elements.
N minus 1 you are saying?
Yes, yes, sir.
Unfortunately, that is not right. In bubble sort, the logic is what is the logic basically? Bubble sort. Bubble sort, the logic is what you do is you start looking at the smallest element. Given n elements, you start looking at the smallest element, and to look at the smallest element, you take the first element, compare it with the second element. Whatever is smallest, whatever is smaller amongst these two is compared with the third element. Whatever is smallest between these, the last two comparisons, is compared with the fourth element, and so on and so forth. So this is done till we reach to the end of the given list. So in all, it requires n minus 1 comparisons, because you are comparing n minus 1 times. Once you do those many comparisons, you have found the smallest element of the n element. So that is put in the first place. Now you start with the second element and repeat this particular operation. So here in the second iteration, probably you will require n minus 1 comparisons. Similarly, in the third iteration, you will require n minus 2. So total number of comparisons will be n, or n minus 1 plus n minus 2 plus n minus 3 plus n minus whatever, till that figure reaches 0. So it will be summation of n minus 1. And the formula for addition or summation of n minus 1 is, what is it? Summation of n. Yes, is it n into n minus 1 by 2? Summation of n?
Yes, sir. Some answers in chat box, sir.
Yeah, it's n into n minus 1 by 2. Yeah. So this is the total number of comparisons, and this figure, whatever is the number of comparisons are n into n minus 1 by 2, that is of the order of n square. Okay, it is very close to n square. So we can say that the complexity of bubble sort is n square. Complexity of bubble sort is n square. Is it right? Now, if you take another sort, another logic, that is another sorting method. Say, for example, quick sort. Now, that has got a complexity of how much? N log n. Of course, we are not going in details of why the complexity is n log n. But if it is n log n, now we have two approaches. One is bubble sort, other is quick sort. The complexities are n square and n log n. Now, for any value of n, by and large, you will find that n square is always greater than n log. So we say that quicksort is better in terms of performance than bubble sort. And this way, so given any problem, what we do is we look for the complexities, and these complexities are compared, and the one which is smallest is considered as the best algorithm, best logic. So that is how we do it, and as indicated in the slide, computational complexities is expressed in terms of big O. So big O of something, big O of n square, say for example, the complexity of bubble sort. And so this way we proceed, and then there are some algorithms which are very complex. So we say that the algorithms are NP hard. Why they are NP hard is because we cannot solve them, or they take non-polynomial time to solve them. Okay, by and large. So this is how we look at the algorithms. Now, because the algorithms are becoming more and more complex, maybe because of the logic or maybe because of the huge data which they are handling, they have found out that it is better to use the fastest available hardware for executing these programs. Of course, you can look at the complexity of the program, you can improve on the complexities, but there are some limits which you cannot go beyond those limits. So as the data increases, you have to think of some other approaches for getting the solution to the problem as fast as possible. So we look at the performance of the hardware, and these performances of the hardware, that is, it could be hardware of your mobile, hardware of your laptop, or whatever, the computational devices which are used in that hardware. So these are expressed in terms of what is called as flops. This flop is nothing but floating point operations per second. So the capability of any hardware to compute the floating point operation is its capability, or it is represented as the quality of that hardware. So nowadays we get the complexities of the hardware expressed or represented in terms of gigaflops or teraflops. Gigaflops is 10⁹ floating point operations per second. Teraflop is 10⁻12 floating point operations per second. You can just imagine how complex they are and how many operations they can perform. So it can go to petaflops, exaflops, yottaflops, and so on and so forth. So the best computers which are available are top supercomputers in the world, and these will probably give you the best performance in terms of the execution. So if you visit the website, that is top500.com, you will find the top, the fastest supercomputers in the world. So probably we'll be happy to use those kinds of computers for solving our problems. Okay. So this is brief introduction about the algorithms. Now let us go to the main problem, that is we are trying to develop the algorithms for applications in artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, if you look at them, it is nothing but incorporating human intelligence into machine. So we want machine to behave like a human. So that's what artificial intelligence is. Part of that is achieved with the help of machine learning. So we call them as machine learning algorithms. So it is empowering the computer systems with the ability to learn. So machine learning actually makes the system learn the things. System learns the things by its own, like human being is being trained for a particular purpose, for a particular task. So similarly, we are training machines for doing a specific task. And in that, what we get is deep learning. So deep learning is a specialized method, we can say, of machine learning. Wherein why it is called as deep is, as far as your neural network is concerned, we try to introduce more number of hidden layers into the input and the output layer. Okay, instead of having only one or two layers, we introduce more and more hidden layers into it, so that we can extract uh, knowledge from the input, and based on that knowledge which is extracted, we can comment on the type or the characteristics of input, and then we can classify that input appropriately. So this can be done if you increase the number of hidden layers in between, and that's how it is called as deep learning. So as far as machine learning is concerned, we have different types of learning. One is called as supervised learning. As I said, you must have studied or heard these terms earlier also in earlier lectures, or maybe if you're teaching these courses, you must have taught them all these things. So this supervised learning is consists of target and outcome variable or independent variable. So target or outcome variable is there, is present in supervised learning. So we know which category it belongs to. So supervised is like somebody is supervising it, and it generates a function that maps input to the
सेकंड
result.
ची थर्ड ची नाही थर्ड नाही सॉरी सेकंड ची पाठवली फर्स्ट अँड सेकंड फर्स्ट अँड
Sorry, hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible. Someone is unmuted, I think. That's why there
Okay,
was.
okay, okay. Okay.
Sir, please unmute yourself. I have muted all. Sir, please unmute yourself. Excuse me, sir, please unmute yourself. Sir, can you hear me?
Uh, Sorry, I think I was on mute.
Yes, yes, right
Oh,
now.
sorry. Sorry. Uh, Let me check. Can you see the screen, the slide?
Yeah, yeah, the screen is still
Yeah.
visible.
So I think this I have completed reinforcement learning. Of course, I'm not going in details of it. So let us directly go to the clustering algorithms. There are two types. One is partitioning, in which we try to partition the given set of inputs, and there are two ways in which we can partition it. One is k-means, which we'll be looking at tomorrow in tomorrow's lecture. Second is clustering. Of course, we are not going in details of this. Second is hierarchical algorithms. In hierarchical algorithms, what we do is we can use two approaches. One is bottom up or top down. In bottom up, what we do is basically if you have say n samples, then we try to combine small number of samples initially, and then we combine the into smaller groups, and then we try to combine these smaller groups together to form the bigger groups, and ultimately these groups are called as clusters later. So this is called as bottom up because we have started with single elements and then we started putting them into smaller groups. So it is called as bottom up. Similarly, we can go for top down. Based on the properties, we can put them into different groups, and then wherever we want to stop, we can stop there, and then we can say that this is what the clustering is. If it is not clear, then maybe I can say it like this. Initially, we are putting all the samples into one group, and then maybe we are asking the question, out of these samples, how many samples have got this particular property, and how many samples don't have this particular property. So maybe we can put it in two groups, two clusters. Again, for the first cluster, we are again asking some other question like how many of these have got this particular property. It could be a different property altogether, or how many of them are colored in this color. So based on these questions, we try to subdivide that cluster into more number of clusters, and this way we just go on dividing it. So this approach is called as top down or divisive. We are just breaking the groups into smaller groups, and this is done unless and until you come to the desired number of clusters. So this is also another method. So these two methods are comes under the category of hierarchical algorithms. Okay, now let us look at the k nearest neighbor algorithm. The simplest question which is being asked is so here the thing is like you have, suppose that you have some uh, 60 number of students in the class, and you have divided that class based on the different properties of the student. Okay, different properties, some different properties you have collected the information about, and based on that information you have divided them into say 5 groups. Why 5 is because on the screen we are getting it as 5 groups. So these 5 groups are the groups in which you have divided all 60 students in the class. Now suppose that one more student enters into class. He is a new student. Maybe this happens in second year of engineering as a direct admitted student. So when he comes, you have a question like, where should I put this student? In which group? So you can ask him, tell me the information about you, and then I'll tell you to which group you belong to, or in which group I'm putting you in. So based on the properties, whatever property he says, then based on that, you are deciding in which group you should put him in. Okay. So this is what k nearest neighbor is. And what is k is basically you take a decision based on to which group he is very close. Of course, this is a mathematical representation of what you do normally. Okay. So let us look at the features. Here, all the instances corresponds to a point in n-dimensional Euclidean space. That is, we are assuming that every person, every instance, or every sample which is being treated has got n dimensions. That is, it has got n number of attributes. So maybe, for example, if you take a person, a human being, or a student, then probably you will take the different features as the year of the birth year, maybe the color of that person, maybe the place from which he is coming, maybe the percentage he has received in the previous year, and whatever. So based on these properties, based on these attributes, you are dividing it into different groups, or you're putting that sample or that the person, the student, into a particular group. This classification is delayed till a new instance arrives. So we don't do a classification as such. What we do is we classify that sample only when it comes. So we don't do anything else before it comes. Okay. The classification is done comparing the feature vector of the different points. So what we do is we try to compare the features or the attributes of this sample, and we compare these attributes with the attributes of the other samples. And based on the result, we decide to which group or to which cluster this unknown point belongs to. Target functions may be discrete or real. So the functions can be discrete or real. Now, as I said, you need to compare. So this comparison is very important operation. So question is how you're going to compare the different samples. Like there are different ways in which the comparison can be carried out. So in comparison, what we are doing is we are actually computing the distance. So there are different ways in which the distances can be computed. You can look at the screen. I hope you can see the screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So there are three types of distances I have shown. One is called as a Manhattan distance. Okay. Manhattan distance. I have shown one typical case also, in which I am trying to compute the distance between 2 points. So these 2 points are 2 points in two-dimensional geometry. First point has got a coordinate of 1 and 6, and the second point has got a coordinate of. Can you see my pointer? Mouse pointer?
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Hello?
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Yeah. So the second point is having the x and y coordinates as 4 and 3. So I'm trying to get the distance between these two. So I can compute the distance in many ways. One of them is, as I said, Manhattan distance. So it is also called as L1 norm distance. L1 norm distance. It is also called as absolute distance. Okay, called as absolute distance. So what is this? How do you compute the absolute distance? This Manhattan distance or absolute distance is computed with the help of the expression like this. So it is square root of I think I made a mistake. Yes. So it is basically this. I made a mistake. It is basically this. It is a summation of xi minus yi. So what I do is I just subtract the x coordinates and y coordinate respectively, and then sum them up together, and whatever I get is called as the Manhattan distance. Right? So if I call this as 0.1 and 0.2, 0.1 has got coordinates 1 and 6, as I said. 0.2 has got coordinates 4 and 3. So what I do is I take 1 minus 4 x coordinates of both the points. I take subtraction of that. 1 minus 4. So 1 minus 4 is taken, and then plus 6, 1, 6, and 4, 3 is there. So 6 minus 3 is taken. So 1 minus 4 plus 6 minus 3. So that becomes 1 minus 4 is minus 3. I take mod of it. So not mod, it is plus. I'm taking plus sign. Okay. Then this will be 3, and 6 minus 3 is 3. So 3 plus 3 is 6. So Manhattan distance between these 2 points is 6. Now if I go for another type of distance, which is called as Euclidean distance, is very common distance. This is the actual distance which is measured on 2D, two-dimensional geometry or two-dimensional space. What we do is it is the actual distance which is traveled, the shortest distance between these 2 points, and this can be computed. This is also called as L2 norm distance. Euclidean distance is also called as L2 norm distance. The formula for this is like this. So this is square root of summation of I is equal to 1 to k xi minus yi square. So what I take is I take xi, that is x coordinate of this, x coordinate of this, I subtract it. Then I take y coordinate of this, y coordinate of this, I subtract it. And then I take square of that. I take the square of that. So summation, it is a summation of square of the distances. So this becomes, you can just look at it. This becomes 1 minus 4 square plus 6 minus 3 square. That becomes 4.24. Distance between these 2 points is 4.24 in terms of L2 long. Third is if I extend it in n dimensions, so probably this is called as Minkowski distance, and it is also called as ln norm distance. So for n is equal to 3, I can do it for any value of 3, any value of n. So for n is equal to 3, it will look like this. The formula for this is we can consider this as a special case. This is a special case of this with value of n is equal to 2. Okay. So I get a formula of 1 minus 3 raised to 3 plus 6 minus 3 raised to 2, and then the cube root of this. That becomes something 2 point something, 2.5 million. Okay, I will compute it. So this is called as Minkowski distance, and depending on the application, you need to decide which distance is appropriate for you, and then based on that, you need to select that distance. So this distance is used to calculate the distance between the points, and this distance between the point will tell you to which group you should make unknown point belong to. Okay. Now this is not the only way of computing distance. There are other ways also, like this cannot be used for say data specifically for the input, like your document data or text data. So distance between two text or distance between say two paragraphs, it is difficult to measure the distance between two paragraphs. So what we do is we use a method called as cosine distance. Of course, that can also be used for geometrical data. So we have taken an example wherein we are computing the distance between the geometrical location of the 2 points. So I have taken the same points and now I am computing the cosine similarity between these 2 points. So when I say cosine similarity, the data points are considered as vectors. So these points are considered as vectors. So vector has got a direction and the length. Okay. So length, of course, will be decided by the x and y coordinates, but the direction is decided by this angle. So we actually compute, or we'll look at what is the angle pertained or made by these 2 points with the origin, and we compute our cosine similarity will be based on that. So data point considered as vector and distance is a function, that is cost function is being used here of the angle between them. So we try to focus our attention towards this angle between these two vectors. So it can be computed as 1 into 4 divided by square root of 1 square plus 6 square, that is the x and y coordinate of this, plus 6 into 3, that is the y coordinates of this, divided by square root of 4 to the power 2 plus 3 to the power 2. That comes out to be 0.72. So this 0.72 is the cosine similarity between the 2 points, between the 2 given points. So it depends, as I said, it depends on which application you are looking at for the KNN level, and accordingly, based on the requirement, you should select the appropriate distance, and this distance will decide to which category unknown sample point will belong to. Let us look at a very simple example of one nearest neighbor. Now, what do you mean by that? One nearest neighbor or k nearest neighbor is we are looking for the nearest point to the unknown sample, to the nearest point of the unknown sample, and we look at the class to which all these nearest k number of points belongs to, and we look for the class to which maximum number of points out of these k, maximum number of points to which class they belong to, and that class is said to be the class of the unknown problem, the class of the unknown problem. Okay. So So in one nearest neighbor, what we do is suppose that this is the point. If this is taken as a point, then we look for which is the closest point of the given set of samples. So probably I can say that this is closer. So I say that this belongs to the category of this all points, which looks like a blank circle or just circle. And if this point is unknown, is taken as unknown, and if we say that this point is nearer, and if the value of k is 1, then this point will belong to this category. Okay, so they both of them will have the same property, and they will belong to the same class. So in actual example, this is given as taken as a point, a known point. So if you look at the distances, then this point seems to be closer to this point. So I say that this point belongs to the category of all black field spots, because this is closer, this point is closer. Okay, the closest point of all is this. So because the algorithm is one nearest neighbor, I'm just looking at the one nearest neighbor, and the class of that is the class of the unknown point. In case of three neighboring point, three nearest neighbor, what we do is, if this is the point or this is the point for which we are looking for the class, then we look for the three nearest samples, and if it happens to be these three nearest are the points to this, okay, these are the three nearest points, then I'll say that out of these 3 points, these 2 points belongs to the category of unfilled circle, and this 1 point belongs to the category of filled circle. And because there are these more number of points are belonging to this cluster in this entire set of nearest points, so we say that this point belongs to this particular class. Okay, the point belongs to that particular class. So we can, depending on the value of k, we can decide to which class the given unknown point belongs to. These are some of the important things about k nearest neighbor or k-NN algorithm. An arbitrary instance is represented, that is, any sample is represented by this particular expression a1x, a2x, where aix denotes the feature. So you have different features, as I said, and the different features are expressed in a proper order. As I said, the features could be age, then length or height or whatever properties it has. What we do is we actually compute the Euclidean distance between the 2 points, and normally, or it could be any other distance which is computed between the 2 points. So Euclidean, if you take Euclidean distance, the formula will be like this, as shown on the slide. And we use a continuous valued target function. So here the target function is comparison, and we use the mean value of k nearest training samples. So whatever we get, we take the mean, the one which is maximum amongst it, and we assign that property or that class to the unknown sample. So this is how it looks like. K nearest neighbor, we are trying to classify this point, star point, unknown point. Now, if you look at it, if it is three nearest neighbor, this is closer to these 3 points, and these 3 points belong to the category of this. So we say that this point, the star point, also belongs to the category of this. So we put them into this. It decides the nearest k samples and belongs to the class to which maximum out of k belongs. Now, the $1,000,000 question here in k-NN algorithm is how to select the value of k given the samples, set of samples, and given the unknown sample. We need to decide what is the value of k one should take. So there can be many number of alternatives available. Like if you take k to be very small, so if 10,000 samples are given, if you take the value of k as 10, or if you take the value of k as 3, 4, then what will happen is for smaller values of k, the entire system is sensitive to the noise inputs. So if there are some noise inputs which are present because of some problems, because of the actual, it differs from actual problem to problem. But if the system has introduced some points as a noise points, then these noise points affects the result of k-NN algorithm. because of that the sample will be wrongly classified. So you need to ensure that the value of k should be moderate. If you take larger values, then it works well, but too large k may include majority points from other classes. So if you have some 10,000 points present, then, and if you take the value of k also as 10,000, then probably whatever class to which maximum points belong to, your unknown point will also belong to that class by default. So that is also dangerous. So you need to have a best compromise between these two extremities, like having the value of k as very small or k as very large. Normally, there is a rule of thumb which says that the value of this k should be square root of n, where n is the number of total samples given to you. If you take the value of n as square root of n, sorry, k as square root of n, or less than this square root of n, then probably your classification will be appropriate. So as I said, k is the number of is the parameter which is being used in KNN, and n is the number of number of samples which are present, number of points which are present in the given process. Now, if you look at the procedure, then normally what happens is you assign a similar kind of weightage to all the attributes of the point. It is possible that some of the attributes of the point, like in case of our example of person, the age of the person probably could be very important compared to the height of the person, or vice versa. So in a typical case, if the age is more important, your KNN algorithm has not given proper justice to this age. And this proper justice can be given by assigning additional weight to that. So instead of assigning a fixed weight of 1 to all the attributes, we assign some fixed weights, predetermined weights to these attributes, and then we compute the distance. This improves the performance of the system because you have been given additional freedom to you are giving additional you have been given additional freedom to assign more weight. So this is called as KNN weighing. So KNN feature weighing is nothing but you are assigning additional weight or some different weight than the default. So we scale each of the feature or each of the attribute by its importance for the classification. So we know that age is more important in this particular example. So we assign more weight to that age compared to the other weights which are given to the other parameters. So here what we do is we assign a weight of wk to a particular attribute, and then the formula will look like this. The distance formula will look like this. Now this wk will alter the total value or affect the total value in a positive way. We can use our prior knowledge for about which the features are more, which features are more important. We can use our own knowledge to decide which out of the given features are more important, and accordingly we can assign the weights. We can learn the weights wk by using cross validation. Of course, we are not going in details, but this is one of the effective way of modifying your algorithm. Now let us look at the characteristics, strengths and weaknesses of this particular method of KNN. Says that KNN algorithms makes no pre-assumption on how the data is distributed. So whatever data you have, it doesn't have any commented on the distribution of the data. Okay. So distribution of data is as far as the classes are concerned. If it is equally distributed, then you may get best results from the given input values. But if it is not properly distributed, if you don't have equal number of samples in every cluster, then probably your result will get affected. Okay. So this feature is known as non-parametric. So it doesn't take into account the data distribution. So it is non-parametric method. So in parametric method, what happens is it looks at the distribution also, the way in which the samples are distributed across the different clusters, because KNN doesn't look into it, or KNN ignores that factor. So it is called as non-parametric algorithm. The strength of this KNN algorithm is, as I said, it is very simple, very intuitive, very straightforward. It can be applied for to the data of from any distribution, any kind of distribution. It doesn't look at the distribution. So take any distribution of data, whether it is normal distribution or spike distribution, whatever. So it is independent of what distribution the data has, and you can apply that particular method. Good classification if the number of samples is large enough. If the number of samples is large enough, then we can expect that you have sufficient number of samples in each one of the clusters, and then probably you'll get better results. Weaknesses of this algorithm: it takes more time to classify a new example, because as you increase the value of k, it has to compare the distances, or it has to compute the distances of between the unknown sample and the known k nearest samples. Of course, it has to compute the distance of the nearest points and then compute the difference, or then look at those distances. So it takes more time. Needs to calculate and compare the distance of new samples to all the samples. That's what I said. You need to look at, you need to select k distance, k points which are closer. So maybe you need to compute the distance of this unknown sample with every other sample in the given set. As we discussed, choosing k is very tricky, very maybe difficult, very complex. Maybe you can use some thumb rules for deciding the value of k, or based on your own prior knowledge, you can fix up the value of k. Need large number of samples for accuracy, as indicated. Huge number of samples are required, or you need to ensure that your distribution is proper. Now let us look at one example. This is a screenshot of one website wherein you can differ this, you can change the parameters manually, and you can see just let me check if I can show, if I can share this screen. Can you see the screen? Hello?
No slides only, sir.
Am I audible?
Website not seen,
Can you
sir.
see the screen?
PPTs are seen.
PPT is being shown. Can you see it now?
Yeah, now it is.
So we can note it down. It is from Stanford.edu, Stanford University. It is the visualization of k nearest neighbor algorithm. So it says that this interactive demo lets you to explore k nearest neighbor algorithm for classification. Each point in the plane is colored with the class that would be assigned to it using k nearest neighbor algorithm. Points for which the k nearest neighbor algorithm results in tie, because probably they are equidistant from the 2 points, then there could be a tie. So these points are colored in white. So you can move the points around by clicking and dragging. So you can take these points like this, and you can see the effect. Okay. So depending on the distance, before that, matrix is which distance algorithm you're using, L1, L2. We have seen that those two things. And the number of classes, this is the value of k. Sorry, this is the number of classes which your points have. How many classes, how many categories it is already divided, and this is the value of k. Now, how many? What is the value of k you are considering? Given a point, the distance of that point with every other point is computed, and then it checks to which class it belongs to. Okay, depending on its closeness to the k parts. It's closest to the k parts. So here I've considered L2 matrix, then 4 classes. You can see 4 different colors, and then I can change the uh, value of k. Look at this. So all the points probably inside this are equidistant, so it is very difficult to decide. If I change the value of k, then again it doesn't change the points. Actually, the points will remain same. Only the belongingness of these points with the different in the different clusters will change. And of course, this is number of points, so you can change these values also. If you do it for 20, if you do it for 3, it will look like this. Number of classes are also 3, say for example. This is how it looks like. Then you can move these points wherever you want. Something of this sort. Now this point is I mean equidistance from these two. So this deciding the class is difficult. Okay, so this is how it looks like. Okay, so I think let me go back to the presentation. Is it okay? I think let us now move to one particular example which will actually help you to understand the process of KNN, which will help you to understand the entire process of KNN. So let me go to that example. Let me stop sharing this. I need to open another file. It is basically Excel file, and I have taken some standard samples in it. Just a minute. Yes. Can you see the screen? Excel file?
No, sir, not yet.
Just a minute. It is creating some problem. I don't know. Yes. Let me do it this way. Can you see it now?
Yes, sir. Please maximize it, sir.
Maximizing will create a problem. Why it is very small?
Yes, it is. I think
Okay.
control
Okay.
plus plus you can, okay. Control plus plus.
Yes. Can you see it now?
Not much,
Is it
sir.
maximized?
It's maximized, but contents are not visible properly.
Can you see it now?
Yes, sir. Now it is okay.
Okay. So let me go to the data. So suppose that this is the data which is given to you. Serial number, name, age, sex, and the sports. Here the problem is I have been given a data of say 12 people, 12 students, or 12 people, and the data in form of the age, sex, and the sports they like is known to me or is given to me. And the problem is I have been given another person. This is an unknown sample X. I know the attribute values like I know the age and I know the sex of this person. I just want to know what is the probability that he will play, which particular sport he will like. Based on this data, I want to decide which particular sport, either whether it is tennis or football or cricket. These are the three games or three sports I've considered. So I just created this data randomly, and I just want to know what particular sports this particular person, what sport out of tennis, football, and cricket this person X may like, which sport he may like, he or yeah, it is he. Okay, so I just want to decide it. So the best way to know this is to use our K-means algorithm. So in K-means algorithm, as I said, what I do is I look at the property or the attributes of the data. Now these are the sample data points. Anil, names of the students, Anil, Beena, Chetan, Daniel, whatever. Their ages are also given, but their sex is given. Now the sex is in form of text. So the data, meaningful data, is either it could be represented as ones and zeros. So it is one could be considered as a male and zero could be considered as a male, female, female. And based on that, you can decide, you can take the data and then you can compute the data, process that data. So as far as processing is concerned, what I have done is I just converted the sexes into ones and zeros. If it is male, it is converted as 1, and if it is female, it is converted as 0. So I kept the age as it is, sex is being converted, and sports are repeated. I mean, just copied as they are. Now what I'm doing is I'm computing the distance of age. How do I compute that distance? That distance is computed by taking the difference between the age of this person and the age of this unknown person, or the age of unknown person and the age of this person. So it is, you can look at it, it is G20, this cell minus this cell, okay, and the square of that, square of that. So this is the difference or the distance between the ages of these two persons, Anil and this unknown person. So that's the difference, and this difference is in terms of squares. Similarly, I compute the difference between these two corresponding element, and then this square, I take square of it. Of course, the distance between or difference between this is 0. So the square of that will be again 0. So I computed the distances of all the points, all these data points from the unknown sample. This is like taking taking this 31 minus 25, which is 6. So square of that is 36. Similarly, 1 minus 0, square of that is 1. Okay. So this way, I have computed the distances of all the points with respect to the unknown point. Okay. And if I add them together, this is the total distance. So I'm adding it like G7 plus H7, something has gone wrong. G plus H. Yeah. I'm adding them and then taking a square root of that. Okay. So 9 plus 0 is 9, square root of that is 3. Similarly, 36 plus 1 is 36, 37, square root of that, and so on and so forth. So I computed the distances. Now, if I'm saying that I'm using k-means algorithm, and if I decided that I'll take the value of k as 3, I'll take the value of k as 3. Maybe you can look at the total number of elements here. It is 12. So probably 3 is better choice, which is less than square root of n. 3 is less than square root of n. So if I take the value of k as 3, then probably I'll get a correct classification of this person in terms of sports. Okay. So that is what I'm doing here in the last slide. So I have just copied it. Now, instead of copying it as it is, what I did is I sorted all these rows based on this distance, so that sorted in increasing order of the total distance. So what will happen is this, the point which is very close to this unknown sample will come at the top. The point which is slightly away in terms of distance will go to the next spot, and so on. So that is what is being done. So you'll see that the order is changed now, and it is based on this distance. So this I have sorted. Okay, so this distance is 1, then 1.4, 1, 1.2, 3, 3, and so on. Getting it? So this is the way in which I have looked at the nearest samples. Nearest to what? Nearest to this unknown sample X. Nearest to this unknown sample X. So the first sample here, in this case, that is Hemant, is very close to this person, because the distance of Hemant from X is 1 unit. Okay. So I'll say that this person will influence the sport category of this person, will influence the sports category of this unknown sample. Okay. But it is not just depending on one closest element, it is depending on the value of k as 3. So I'm looking at 3 closest points, through 3 closest points to this unknown sample. The value of k is taken as 3. So I'll be considering these first three points, first 3 samples. Now, out of them, two of them likes tennis. So I've taken the value of tennis as 2, and one of them likes cricket. I've taken the value of cricket as 1. Football nobody likes out of these 3, because it is k, the value of k is 3. So I'm looking at 3 nearest neighbors. 3 nearest neighbors. So this value is 2. This value is football nobody likes. Cricket, one person likes. That is Hemant likes cricket. So this is how it will look like. Now look for the one which is highest amongst this. Now the highest is 10. So I'll say that there is high probability that this person will like tennis. This unknown person will like tennis. So that is what K nearest neighbor is. That is what K nearest neighbor is. Is it okay? Any doubts in this before I go to weighted kind of thing? It is very simple, straightforward, but let me just show that as an additional example. Okay, so let me keep it as it is. I look for, I check for another example. Just a minute. Please bear with me. Yes, yes, yes. Just a minute. Yes, can you see it now? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, it is
Yes.
visible, sir.
Yeah. So again, I have taken the same example. Only thing is that I have added one more parameter into it. That is, instead of just taking age and sex, I have taken height also of that person, because I thought that height will probably influence the sports he or she likes. So this is what the data is. Then once I process it, again I'm converting sex into ones and zeros, and then I'm doing the same thing almost, computing the difference in terms of age, or distance in terms of age, distance in terms of height, distance in terms of sex. Okay, and then I'm computing the total distance of the corresponding points from this particular sample, unknown sample. Okay, so this is 9. For example, if I take this, say 64, why it is 64 is I'm subtracting 23, the corresponding value of age 23 from this unknown sample. So that will become how much? 8, right? 31 minus 23 is 8. So 8 square is 64. Similarly, 64 plus 4. By 4 is difference between these two and square of that, and then summation of this and square root of this. So once I compute all these distances, and then I'll go for Kn. Now Kn, simply it will look like this. I'm just using Kn as it is. So what will happen is I have sorted this G column, and then all the rows based on this G column. Now it is in increasing order, and if I want to know the value of Kn for k is equal to 3, I'll be looking at Yeah, I'll be looking at the first three persons, and the first three persons are, because they are very close to the unknown sample. So out of the first three samples, no one likes cricket. Two of them likes football, and one of them likes tennis. So they have written it accordingly. Two of them likes football, and one of them likes tennis. And the one which is highest amongst them is two, that is football. So I'll say that X sample belongs to the category of. Okay, so this is as simple as that. I just added one parameter into it. Now let me just look at the revised version, that is a weighted version of this KNN. So in weighted KNN, what I'm doing is assigning the weights to the different attributes. So I've decided to assign these weights, like height is not important. Probably sex is more important. Depending on the sex, the people will go for appropriate choice of the sports. So I've given maximum weightage to the sex, least weightage to the height, and moderate weightage to the age. The weights are 2, 1, and 3 for age, height, and sex respectively. I'm just doing the same thing again, and I'm just recomputing these values. Let me just check whether I've done it appropriately or not. Yeah, it is like I'm multiplying this weights with the distances, okay, and then computing this distance. I hope this is right. So whatever age you get, you multiply that age with the weight, okay, distance of age with the weight, and then take the value. Okay. And then again, you need to sort them based on the DW value. Why it is DW is weighted distance. And then if I take the value of KS3, then I'll be looking at the first three samples. Out of first three, two of them likes tennis. So tennis is liked by 2% and football is liked by 1%. So probably the value of maximum value is 2, that is tennis. So the X will have a label of tennis. X will be categorized under the cluster of tennis. So this is how it is actually done. But if you look at the entire method, this seems to be very simple, very straightforward method, but intuitive method. But of course, you can use the advanced version, like you can add the weight factors into it, and lot many things you can do. And you can look for the distribution also later on. But that becomes more and more complicated. The most complex part of this is you need to compute. Remember, you need to compute the distance of the unknown sample with every other sample. So every time probably you are running that algorithm, and I mean you are doing those many computations. As you increase the number of dimensions, number of attributes of the data, the number of computations will also increase. So this will have higher complexity in terms of number of distance computations. And of course, the computation complexity can be computed on based on the distances. Of course, once you compute the distances, you need to sort them accordingly. The weight, the distance, total distance rather. That is also additional things which you need to do. But most of the time will be taken by these distance computations, because you are computing the distance. So if you have n samples, n distances need to be computed, and if every sample has got d dimensions, so n into d distances needs to be computed, and then you need to make square of them, and then you need to take a square root of them and all. So all these are the computational complexities which are involved, and once you do it, you need to sort it. So again, probably the best sorting algorithm will require n log n kind of comparison. So again, that needs to be taken. So if your total number of elements are n, total number of samples are n, it will be n log n is the complexity involved. And once you take it, then probably based on the value of k, you need to select those many samples, look for uh, the clusters or the groups to which they belong, and take the one which is maximum amongst them, and then assign that group name to or label to the unknown sample. Okay. So this is how it goes, and this is how it is actually done. Remember that this is typical method of unsupervised learning. Why it is unsupervised is because we don't know anything about the class. Okay? We don't know anything about the class of the. Uh, no one tells. It is based on the value of k, and it is based on the value of the distances. Okay. Okay. So I think that's all about the algorithm KNN, and I think we have seen the examples also. And as I said, this is the most used, widely used algorithm in machine learning because it is very simple, but the complexity is very high. So I'd like to see if you have any doubts or any questions. So I can see one question here. So do you have to consider k number of neighbors in this case 3? Yes, yes. It depends on the value of k. So you should consider k number of neighbors. And how you decide the neighborship? Neighborship is decided based on the distance. How there is a question how to perform KNN in Python. See, this is the way in which you can use arrays and you can compute the distances and then you can perform it. So see, remember that these algorithms it is independent of which programming language you are using, because once the algorithm logic is fixed, it will have the same complexities. Whatever programming language you are using, it is independent of that. So you can write a simple program for implementing it in Python. Just to understand it very, easily, I put it in form of Excel. KNN, is KNN similar to decision tree? No, decision tree is something like you are looking at the attributes, and based on the attributes, you are deciding to which branch you should move, and then accordingly the categories are formed. So though most of the algorithms looks, the logic looks to be almost similar, but here in case of KNN, what we are doing is we are looking for the attributes and then we are computing the actual distances, and based on that distances we are deciding. Is it possible to apply only numerical attributes? Is it possible to apply only on? In case of numerical attributes, it is very easy. In case of non-numerical attributes, you need to convert them into numerical attributes. So the distance formulas like cosine similarity, these can be computed for documents. Now for documents, you need to take some numerical differences between the two documents. So numerical differences can be taken using these cosine similarities. Okay, but that cosine similarities again, it will take much time to explain how to compute the cosine similarity between documents. But that is being done. So you take any sample data point, you can compute the distances. You can use various distance formulas for doing it.
Okay.
All right. So any other question?
Any other questions? You can unmute yourself also.
Yeah. You can unmute yourself and you can ask the question.
Okay. So I think no questions. Yes,
All right.
Okay.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So that you have took your time out from your busy schedule and deliver the such sessions. Thank you, participant. Definitely enjoyed this session, I think. So we'll have again one session on tomorrow afternoon 1 p.m., sir.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
right. Thank
So
you.
participant, we will meet again on the tomorrow for the same session, a continuation of the same session at 1 p.m. And in the morning session, we'll have one session from Dr. Gitanjali Sinde ma'am on the model design on classification theory. So till that, thank you all of you. Thank you, Kulkarni sir. So this is attendance link. You can fill it. Yes, you will all material will get at the end of the session. Means tomorrow evening we will create one Google Classroom and we'll post all the material on that one. So don't worry about the SCTP material. You will get all the things. So, okay, thank you all. Yeah, Renuka ma'am, test will be conducted on tomorrow in the last session.